Welcome to our mini talk series with this hot commodity at this conference, teachers, experts. My name is MacKenzie Rawcliffe. I work for the International Society for Technology and Education. We're a teacher membership organization. We have standards, we have a conference. You should check us out, but focus is on the teachers here. They come from a broad range of experiences and expertise. And so I'll introduce them. Did I do it? Already I'm failing.
Let's see what we can do here. Hang on. Let's make sure that we're on the
It's
right.
just working. Well, anyways, I'll explain. On the next slide, there's two links because we're going to have a back channel. So if you think of questions, you shouldn't have to log in or anything. So you can try to ask questions as it's coming. We have a short question and answer period. And then it will be open for a month, so maybe you can interact after the fact. There's a notes doc. Some of the speakers have put some links in there. I will be putting links that strike my fancy as we go along. So that hopefully will be helpful. And you can listen rather than furiously try to take down all the links that they mention. So we have... Yes, I can. I'm sorry. I don't want to take up their time. Oh, also, I have this slide again at the end. So if someone comes in later, it will come back. Okay, we're good? Okay. So first, we have Mike Farley, a world studies middle school and high school teacher from Toronto. He uses games to deepen understanding of real-world events. He's been working for 10 years to create a thriving community with his website ChangeGamer, creating, sharing, and adapting gaming curriculum. Then we will continue connecting games to real life with Deich, a STEM coordinator for a Florida school district. Through fellowships, mentoring, and national competitions, he has shown how games curriculum help both the school and the student connect with the community. Matthew Farber is a professor in Colorado and an author of several books, including one new this year, Gamify Your Classroom, a field guide to game-based learning. He is also an insightful blogger on Games for Edutopia, world-traveling speaker. He'll examine what it takes for a teacher to take the leap into games and how they adapt them for their classroom. Whoops. Then Heather Hibner, an assistant high school principal. I need to go down. And former teacher from Pennsylvania will take us on the teacher's journey to games, telling us the story of implementing a school-wide games curriculum from the administrative perspective. Finally, Tammie Schrader, a regional computer science coordinator from Washington, who is also a Department of Ed fellow, will help us scale up on how a games curriculum gets implemented across a region with schools of varying sizes and resources. And hopefully I've portrayed your presentations accurately, but please help me, and we're just gonna go right through. So Mike is first. And so I'll get your... Help me again.
Still not working. Should we just use the arrow key?
You can't, don't click. Okay. It has to stay focused on this window. And then it'll work. So just, let's ignore this thing entirely, put it away.
Thank you so much, MacKenzie. So yeah, I've been teaching middle and high school geography and world studies for the last 15 years, full-time in Toronto. And on the side, I started a little organization called ChangeGamer, which is essentially trying to provide free resources for teachers who are interested in game-based learning. And over the last 10 years, that organization has grown to include many teachers and academics who are all volunteering their time and who are really passionate about using games with their students. My own journey started, I think it was about 2005. I wasn't using games at all in the classroom. I wasn't really a gamer myself, and I stumbled across a game called Pax Warrior, which was exploring the Rwandan genocide of 1994. I decided to use it with my classes, and it had a tremendous, powerful impact on my students, and I haven't really looked back since then. So today I'm going to share with you three main takeaways that we've learned over the last 10 years or so. I'm going to talk a little bit about curriculum, and then research, and then game design. So curriculum, that's really the bread and butter of what we do. When I first started using games, I was talking to a lot of other teachers in the Toronto area, and they were excited about the idea of using games, but there was a gap. They didn't really know how to start using games. They didn't know how to scaffold those games within their classroom. They didn't know how to scaffold the games to fit within their curriculum or with their students. So that's really the void that we're trying to fill by providing free student activities for each of the games that we use with our students. When we first started 10 years ago, we were really flying by the seat of our pants. We didn't really know what we were doing at all. You know, our early student activities included a lot of instructions of how to play a game, which is a terrible idea. The questions tended to be really simplistic, but over time, they've evolved greatly. So what we're really focusing on now is larger, bigger questions that, you know, students who've played a game, what can they take away from that and apply to some real world situation? You know, so for example, you see up on the screen here, this is Stop Disasters. This is a screenshot from the ChangeGamer website. You can see here, you can download the activity PDF or Google Doc version. You can edit it however you want. It gives a bit of information about it. So, you know, I've been using this game for a few years with my grade 7 students, and essentially it's teaching students about disaster preparation and lessening the effects of disasters. And specifically, I've used it to look at tsunamis with my geography students. The overarching question that has evolved over this time is I really want them to look at 2 case studies. So I want them to look at the 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami that killed over 225,000 people, and compare that to the Japanese tsunami of 2011 that killed less than 20,000 people, and yet the size of the tsunamis were relatively equal, and the size, magnitude of the earthquake that caused them relatively equal. So why was that? Why was so many more people perished in the Indian Ocean tsunami compared to the Japanese tsunami? And through watching the students play, if you've ever played it before, it's a very, very basic online digital game. And the amount of learning that is embedded with that game that they can pull out and apply what they've learned to those 2 case studies and come out the other end of it with a very, very solid, very deep and complex understanding of all the variables that were at play that led to such a discrepancy in human loss between those 2. So that's just one example. What we've used, all of these teachers, we've used over 35 digital games with our students. And they cover a wide variety of topics. Everything from energy and climate change, the environment in general, natural disasters, politics, economics, history, science, and more recently we've been dabbling in philosophy games, and we're really excited to be going to be trying out Tracy Fullerton's game Walden in the upcoming year with some of our grade 12 philosophy classes. So the second thing I wanted to touch upon was research. And you know, just hearing Constance speak this morning about some of these incredible studies that have been done about the impact that games have, that's really fantastic. And as an educator, that's really interesting to dig deep into. But there's also the potential to do like a teacher-led, like a really mini study with your students. So that's something my school supported, teacher-led research. And that's something I tried a couple of years ago with a game called Fort McMoney. Fort McMoney is a docu-game that focuses on an oil development project in Western Canada. Very, very controversial project. Tends to boil down to this economy versus environment debate. Very, very divisive. And I wanted to see through Fort McMoney, through playing that, if the students could have a much more complex and nuanced understanding of that issue. So in this game, you're kind of playing as a reporter, you're driving around, and you're interviewing people about that issue. Anybody from homeless people to the mayor, up to 55 people in the game. It's like a choose-your-own-adventure style. So what I did is I asked them a number of pre-game questions, and then have them play for about 2 or 3 periods, and then come back and answer some post-game questions. So for example, one of the first questions that I asked them was, what word, phrase, or image comes to mind when you hear the term oil sands, which is the name of this project? And not unsurprisingly to me, it was more the reflexive, like dirty, oil, environment, pollution, money. Alberta, which is where the project's located. But after playing it, oh, sorry, so these are some of the responses that the students came up with first, and it's just a word cloud, so the size of the response is proportional to the frequency. But when I ask the same question afterwards, we see a much greater variety of answers. And this is what I was really trying to dig in with this game. There's a lot of social issues that are coming up about homelessness, poverty, addiction, the mistreatment of women, Aboriginal issues, local corruption. And these are the things that, in playing a game like this, you could really get below the surface and get below just the headlines, which is unfortunately what tends to happen with a lot of issues like this. It's kind of like a black or white issue, and I wanted to see all the shades of gray of that. And that study is available in the Google Doc that MacKenzie was mentioning. Finally, I wanted to talk quickly about game design. So unfortunately, I shied away from game design for many years with my students because I just wrongly equated it with coding or programming, which obviously it's not. And I don't know how to do that myself. But then I ran into the Games for Change toolkit, which is a neat guide basically preparing people to create a pitch about a social impact game. So I use that as a framework with my students for a number of different projects, and it really hit me just how, with not a lot of information or training, how deep they dug into game design and the topics themselves. So for example, they came up with, this was a Geography of Asia class, they came up with Ai Weiwei security risk, which was looking at freedom of expression in China, Kim Jong-un, which was looking at refugees fleeing from North Korea, Schooled, which was looking at gender equity in Pakistan, and Saffron Survivor, which was looking at the 2007 Saffron Revolution, a Buddhist monk uprising that happened in Myanmar. So again, I mean, it really hit me just how students, without even coming up with a final product of a game that people are going to play, just the initial stages of that, how deep they dug into it and how much more they had to understand the issue by creating a game about it as opposed to just writing like an essay or doing a simple presentation or something like that. And so this has inspired me through my students. Now I've just started the Master's Certificate program in Serious Game Design at Michigan State University. So they've inspired me myself. So I'm out of time and I want to hand it over to Randall, but thank you very much.
Good afternoon, welcome. Games and social impact, and I want to just frame a little bit. Myself, my background was in high school because during my 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade, I spent that time not in class, but in the arcade across the street. And I'm finding that now I'm pulling that knowledge and skills and those attitudes from that experience as a high school student that I'm parlaying to my students. My experiences with Atari, ColecoVision, and television, and those were what framed my understanding of games, not necessarily a college course or any type of particular program. To understand social impact in games, I want to just frame a little bit on the school that I currently work at. 4 years ago, the district pretty much gave up on the school. It was, by No Child Left Behind, identified 3 years as a grade of an F, which means failing on one achievement test on one particular day of the year. And they got rid of the entire staff, from facilities all the way to principal, cleared house, and the only thing that remained the same were the students. And fortunately, I volunteered with an amazing group of people to work at that school. Because at the time, my principal said, do whatever you like to get the kids excited. Well, he didn't really know my background in high school. That exciting for me was playing games. And so I spent the first 2 years just learning the children and understanding that they wanted to create, which is kind of nice because I have a philosophy of let's learn to not just consume, but to produce. And that is the mantra I have with our students. So let me tell you what started off as social impact turned into something different. We started creating things in the beginning with Scratch and Alice. And social impact for us was areas that dealt with agriculture, water conservation, energy conservation, bullying issues, and they were just creating, content-driven games, the themes that were there. And they really had a great time. And what was unique and different is I noticed the change wasn't so much the social impact with those particular areas. It brought on a certain awareness level, but the change really was culture, attitude, and perception. Because you gotta remember, the district, when I say the district gave up on us, because they didn't say, here's a program, here's extra funding. They said, we don't care what you do, just do something different. Okay. And they didn't expect that games would bring on the change. So what happened was our students were creating games using a game engine donated by GW Publishing, Game Factory. And they were creating games of bullying. They were creating games of obesity and relationships. And they had a wonderful time. And the games are phenomenal. And I'll explain, not just phenomenal because I think so, but I think other people think that they're phenomenal as well. So we started having game jams in our own school. We didn't invite any external people out there at first because we didn't really know what we were doing, but we were having fun doing it. What happened was we started seeing mentoring going on between our grade levels. We're schools, Lauderhill 6-12, 6 because we're 6th grade through 12th grade. The second year, we actually started participating in game jams that were in the Tri-County area, Palm Beach, Broward, and Dade County. What was wonderful and unique, every game jam we attended, our students were pulling in first place prizes. As a matter of fact, I have one of the students here. Shanice has won multiple first place awards. Shanice, go ahead. One of my students who met me here today. So once again, perception is changing. Everyone who thought we were failing students, now we're actually taking away first place prizes. We started having students interested in wanting games from us for mobile apps. Once again, what was unexpected, our students presented to a group of local businesses and two seventh graders, they're 12-year-old students, got the attention of the South Florida Accelerator, who are now being mentored in business and entrepreneurship to take their game to market. Culture, attitude, and perception, changing just because of games. Earlier this morning, you heard about the ESA Loft Fellowship from Entertainment ESA. The first year, our student won one of those spots and was sent to Washington. We want to see if that was lightning in the bottle. Can we do it again? Next round, a year later, 2 more students entered the competition. 2 students walked away with prizes and being sent to Washington to present their games. So it wasn't a fluke. Games we're talking about research. This is not just the research, this is the impact that you're seeing because of the games. One of the things that we've also noticed is we had to broaden ourselves and look at a national market. Shanice, who you acknowledged earlier, she also created something called Happy Help Hub, which addressed teen issues. She was sent and was able to present her work at the NAACP Scientific Olympics. Big difference. 4 years ago, we were a triple F school. Now our students are presenting at a national and getting recognized at a national level. It really is a social impact is internally for our students. And we have, at this point, our community saying, how can we help you? I don't have to recruit, they're coming to us. So our students program games, and then American Express has come and shared their software engineers to give feedback. So our 7th graders are actually going to American Express for a day and programming games and getting feedback from their professionals. It's a huge difference. They're using Minecraft as a demonstration of mastery, and they're actually educating our teachers on our faculty and how to do things different and not to be boxed in with an assessment. So what started off as trying to reach a global audience through agriculture, water, energy conservation, what I found out was our social impact for games was taking our audience, my students, and presenting them to the globe as game designers. That's our social impact. Thank you for your time.
I'm afraid to touch anything.
Not that afraid, he went for it. I think, yeah, that's right. It should take us right to you. Is that you?
No,
Yeah.
that's me.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Down button.
Okay. All right. So I'm living in a world where down is up and up is down. So hi, everybody. Hello. I'm Matt Farber. I've had an interesting year. I've been a social studies teacher for 9 years, and I'm now an assistant professor at the University of Northern Colorado in technology, innovation, and pedagogy, and I leave tomorrow morning for a long drive. I ended up my school year on NPR. They were WNYC here in New York, visited and did a piece on how I use empathy, games that bring empathy to students, specifically the Migrant Trail, and that's on online. Anyway, I'm going to talk today about game-based learning in action. In particular, how are experts using games in the classroom? Some of this work stems from my dissertation, which is going to be a forthcoming book, not the book mentioned before, but another book called, wait for it, Game-Based Learning in Action. And it's about how an expert affinity group uses games in the classroom. There are several people in the room that are in the book and in my dissertation. So there's a kind of an overlap. And this is the intersection of really good teaching, and guess what? There are a lot of really good teachers out there, and really good games, okay? And there are some design decisions in learning games that may or may not even need to be in there when they're in the classrooms of really good teachers, okay? Just like, I don't know, other media, like books, right? Books, movies, just saying. Oh, so this is the tribe, right? This is some of the tribe, okay? There's Mark Suter, mentioned earlier. Steve Isaac spoke before. Braun taking a picture of herself in the back, kind of meta. I see you. I see you. Okay. At Matthew Farber. So this is actually from Serious Play, a conference that also goes on every year. I wasn't able to make it this year, unfortunately, due to jet lag, but this is last week, so the tribe as a hashtag is still there. And there's actually a nascent Facebook group called The Tribe, which is growing and growing over the last couple of weeks. Even Jim G's a member and participant. So there's that. So this is where the origin story of the tribe. Peggy Sheehy, I don't know if you're here, because just kidding. So Peggy will say name the tribe, and she used to give those out at the Games at Ed conference and at ISTE. That's the red bandana, and that's got some sort of ritualistic ceremony, right? Educational anarchist, right. It's even in her LinkedIn page, I checked. So actually the tribe is a very active community practice. So, students who use games in the classrooms of expert teachers are not sitting there with just like, staring at screens and the computer's doing all the teaching, okay? So my work is to see how this actually looks, what this actually looks like. And these teachers, myself included, we're not teaching in a vacuum. We're sharing with each other. When I go to one classroom, when I went to Peggy's class, she asked, how Paul DeVarsy, another teacher up there, is using Gone Home, and can I get some licenses for that? Or, Steve Isaacs, who spoke earlier this morning, I asked him what are his open assessment questions, right? So we share with each other. So here's some people in the tribe. This isn't everybody, but these are all the people so far in my book. So we have Braun back there, who I've mentioned, singled out. Sorry if I'm singling you out. Sorry, not sorry. There's Jim Pike in the middle up there. He teaches algebra and math using Minecraft. And we've got John Fallon here in the room, who teaches English with Her Story, for example, and alternate reality games. I'll go a little quicker because there are a lot of teachers here, right? Some more, like Tobias, who teaches ethics using The Walking Dead. Peggy, I've mentioned. Paul, I studied him teaching with Gone Home in the classroom in place of an English text. We've got AJ Webster from California, and Zach Gilbert, and Mariam Malmstrom, who's now in New Zealand, and Lucas Gillespie. So, this is an international group of people, by the way. My dissertation, I'll go a little faster, was in these 3 specific classrooms. So that was my starting point. Steve Isaacs, Paul DeVarcy, and Peggy, and me and the Dr. Hoosier. I selected everybody because those were the 3 of the 4 most recent keynote speakers at the Games in Education conference at the time. And I went into their classrooms as a case study ethnography. And what did I find out? Lessons learned. Well, transformational teachers like Peggy up here, for example, they don't speak in front of their classroom to a lectern like this. They're transformational at conferences, but in their classroom, they're servant leaders. So here you can see Peggy at the student's eye level doing what she calls a flash lesson, or what Jim G would call on-demand, just-in-time teaching. Experts twist games. They don't just use games like Mavis teaches typing, as you just use it right out of the box. They twist games to their purposes. Like John Fallon back there, hand up again. He uses her story to teach about unreliable narrators. Sorry if I spoiled the game for anybody. They also do something called contextual transposition. This is a term from Chris Haskell, a professor from Boise State. Kerbal Space, right? It's a rocket simulator. He uses it to teach about the Cold War. 2 teams. One is Russia, and one is, or Soviet Union, and one is America. And then students get different roles, like spies or propaganda writers. And they don't use dashboards. Let's say that again. They don't use dashboards. Let's say that again. They don't use dashboards. They're teachers. Teachers are really good at this stuff. We have a ton of tools for this already. Like, I don't know, Google Classroom. Many teachers just make a nice T-chart and they assess like that. They use screenshots as assessments. Some have their own models, like Tobias Stabby and Alex Hosoi from Norway. They teach with a game, and then they teach us something in the real world. Drag and box algebra, right? And then actual algebra. And then they discuss in the middle. Expert teachers also use Shonian reflective practices. They have students reflect on action, okay? And this is something that's also been embraced by David Williamson Schaefer. As far as I spoke with him on this also, because you're right in the point of view or perspective of the role you're taking in the game, the way you would in an internship. And lastly, they use games as what NPR referred to my classroom as impossible field trips. Where else would you be able to take your students, like you guys are saying, right? You're not going to be able to take them to a tsunami, right? Imagine that permission slip. So games take your students on these impossible field trips. Games are the hub of learning, as Mark Ruppel told me from the National Endowment of the Humanities. They're the hub in the classroom where learning emanates around. And these classrooms are playful. They're filled with playful affordances where students are invited to learn by play. And lastly, I want to end with this. This is from Remy Kalir, and this is gameful learning. This is what's in all these classes also. This is what drives self-directed learning theory, where students have competence, autonomy, and relatedness, where students take risk. They don't know what's going to happen next. That's playful ignorance. They play with identities, and they have this illusory mindset. And so do the teachers. All the teachers are gameful. Going to work, we're using games like this, it's gameful. Teachers change their role. Maybe Steve Isaacs pretends he's running a game studio, right? Maybe he doesn't know what's going to happen next. We don't know what's going to happen next when we use a game in the classroom. And that's the excitement of it. Thank you.
I'm good. Good afternoon. My name is Heather Hibner, and I'm here on the panel to speak about the evolution of learning through student-centered classrooms and game design curricula, specifically the development and implementation of the Entertainment Technology Academy course program at Elizabeth Ford High School, located in the Elizabeth Ford School District. We're just outside of Pittsburgh. So a little bit about me to make this all make more sense. Doesn't my Bitmoji look pretty much exactly like me? So I'm a graduate of Bethany College. It's a very small traditional liberal arts college in the mountains of West Virginia. I was a classroom teacher for 11 years, first an English teacher and then a gaming teacher.
I have my master's degree from California University. I'm a doctoral student at Point Park, and I've been a high school administrator for going on 5 years. I've worked as a classroom teacher and now administrator in 3 different school districts, and that has exposed and affirmed to me that I believe in the core of my soul that what we are doing at Elizabeth Ford is positive to transform teaching and learning. So check us out at EFSHS Warriors. Also in the audience, she's going to probably not raise her hand, but I'm going to point her out and call her out. 5th row back right there. Oh, look, she's emphatically waving. Is my computer science teacher, Miss Mary Wilson. She's to be applauded for the successes of the program that you will see today. So to tell the story correctly, I need to start at the beginning. Through some serendipitous meetings, Elizabeth Forward High School transformed the learning environment through the implementation of the Entertainment Technology Academy. That's kind of a mouthful. Like any adventure, this one was peppered with learning experiences, and much like the media plot line of the hero's journey was the course that the program in district culture has taken. So my portion of the panel will walk you through our hero's journey of learning, our successes, but more importantly, our challenges and obstacles that we continue to face and overcome. There we go. So much like every story of a journey, it all began with a call. It's imperative at the start of any journey to begin with a necessity or the awareness of the necessity for change. Before the Entertainment Technology Academy, our BCIT department was in dire straits. Students were not choosing the classes, therefore the classes were not filling up. The department was essentially on the cusp of implosion. Reason being, the classes being offered were archaic and underserving for our conceptual age learners. They were offering PowerPoint, how to make a PowerPoint, keyboarding, how to literally type on a keyboard, and these classes were just too underserving. So a drastic change was needed in order for the department to survive. So it was with that in mind that our upper administration, by happen chance, met Dr. Don Marinelli. If you don't know him, follow him. He's fantastic and brilliant, and my intellectual crush. He is the yin to Randy Pausch's yang, if that makes any last lecture. Okay, good, I hear some yeses. So he is the former co-executive director of Carnegie Mellon University's Entertainment Technology Academy and the co-founder with Randy Pausch. This meeting proved to be the elixir of change needed. From there, 2 other mentors were found, Nikki Nafta from Zulama and Greg Baer from the Grable Foundation. So within the crossing threshold portion of any media journey, the hero commits to the journey. So for us, that happened with physically redesigning a classroom. It was a traditional computer classroom. The computers were all around the edges, and it was completely gutted and transformed. So the talk after this, I believe, is on creative spaces. Truly, the space is essential to what we do. So by nature of design, you see here that this space just naturally invites collaboration, creativity, student-centered instructional delivery. There is no teacher desk in this room. So to mirror what I've heard previous to me, it actually gets the teacher away from the sage on the stage, and they are just a guide on the side. So what we had to do next, they had to find allies. So there she is, one more time in case you didn't see her, to see the back of her head, that's the front of her face, Miss Mary Wilson. They had to recruit internally. This happened in 2010 and 11. The first 2 teachers had to be willing risk takers who shifted the paradigm from teacher-centered to student-centered learning. In 2010, this was huge. This was a huge shift despite being the modern trend in educational instructional design. So one of the major enemies of this program was, at initial implementation, it challenged traditional teaching styles and methodologies. It was baptism by fire in uncharted teaching waters. So the evolution of the program continues to be a fluid obstacle for us. Originally implemented, we learned that we began with an end vision in mind, which would be the gaming internship class. However, the details of that vision were not concrete and they weren't clear. To be specific, the introductory courses were implemented for the first time in about 2011. The end goal was apparent. We wanted students to progress organically through the courses and eventually matriculate to the gaming internship course. The details of what that actually looked like at the time weren't defined for us. So this is something we continue to refine each and every year. Being the first public school to implement this into a brick and mortar school was something that we hope others have learned since from our mistakes. So we do use The Art of Game Design by Jesse Schell. He's here. That's kind of our Bible for our game design courses. And it's important to note that our teachers are using games to teach this, but the end result is on the last slide as a QR code. The end result is the students create games themselves based on game design theory for nonprofit organizations. So the implementation of this program has caused a ripple effect in instructional design. I'm a former ETA teacher, and now I'm the administrator who oversees it. And I've lived through my own teaching evolution from a very traditional, I called it my boring English classroom, to one where you really look at the design of your instruction and flip it to a student-centered model. It's more humanistic in nature. So I've even seen this evolution with my two teachers, Ms. Wilson and Ms. Dombrowski, who couldn't be here today. The reward was hands-on baptism by fire professional development, and professional epiphanies have been shared with our colleagues. Our teachers teach our teachers, and one of the PLCs that we used this year was called Tech Buddies. So some of the successes, we have encouraged a risk-taking environment from the administrative level down. We encourage it, we love it, we want to see it. Take a risk, fail at it, that's okay, but fail quickly and learn from it. Change teaching styles, engage students, more real-world relevant courses, that is a tongue twister. 21st century skills, workplace collaboration, and student-generated games, which you'll see there. Ms. Wilson also has cards with QR codes on them, so you can go directly to the website where the student-generated cross-curricular games are located. So some of our challenges. The successful implementation of this program was a catalyst for curricular evolution. We evolved now into a district with the following opportunities. We have a mobile fab lab. We have an MIT certified makerspace, maker classes, one-to-one K-12, a dream factory in our middle school, an energy lab. So it sparked growth in so many areas, but one of our challenges is we created it. At the high school level, we have so many things for students to do and to take that they're limited. So one of our challenges has been the natural matriculation that we wanted to see through the ETA. They're not sticking strictly with the ETA anymore. So it's caused a good problem, but a problem. So that's pretty much it. I've got some formatting issues there, but I would like to introduce Tammie. If you have any questions, please throw them for me on the open source, and I will be sure to answer them. And then, of course, Ms. Wilson is here as well. Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon. Wow, that is loud, and I'm already loud. Are we good? Are we good here? Hi. Nod your heads. Come on, I'm used to being a teacher. So I just want to take a minute to tell you about my journey. My journey began when I became a teacher, and I didn't become a teacher until I was about 33. Previous to teaching, I lived in Los Angeles and worked for a NASA contractor and worked on little programs like, the Peacekeeper missile, space shuttles, those kind of things. And then I went and had 2 children, and it transformed my life, and I decided I was going to go tutor at a high school, and I tutored at a high school for one day, went home to my husband and said, I'm going back to school, I want to be a teacher, I want to play with kids. This is great. And so I did, and I got to tell you, his eyebrows went up, and he said, a teacher, really? That's what you want to do? And I'm like, yeah, it's the best time ever. And besides, working with engineers really helped train me to work with middle schoolers, right? And if you're an engineer, I'm so sorry. I don't mean to insult you. I have a brother who's an engineer, and I love him dearly, and we insult him to his face. So anyway, my journey into gamification, and by the way, I hate to say this at this conference, but I'm gonna just go ahead and admit it. My daughters grew up, and we didn't allow video games in my home because I thought, come on, find something better to do with your time. And now they rip on me constantly, and they're both gamers, by the way. And so my journey began with a kid named Tim. Tim walked into my classroom. Tim's a 7th grader. Tim is brilliant. He's smart. I love Tim, but he doesn't want to do anything, ever. And Tim, one day I gave an assignment, hey, you guys were going to create games, and I'm thinking in my mind, board games, look like Monopoly, Twister, well, maybe not Twister at middle school. Okay, so I said, hey, let's build some games around plant identification and those kind of things. Well, Tim walks in the day after I give the assignment and puts a thumb drive into my hand. And I say, Tim, well, you want me to print money? You want me to print instructions? What do you got? He goes, no, I hacked into Mario. And my first thought was, I think that's illegal, and my second thought was, woohoo, Tim did my assignment. So I put the Mario assignment, and by the way, for those of you who've met Mario, the little guy runs, jumps up and grabs a coin. I've met Mario since, and by the way, we are not friends. I'm sorry, but I just couldn't get my head around that game. But anyway, here's the great thing. I put it on my smart board, right? And every kid in the building, only 150 of who I teach, wanted to come into my classroom and play this game. Like before school, during lunch, after school, right? So anyway, I get introduced, let's start making games in classrooms. You know what? Because it serves them. These kids are playing till 4 in the morning on Saturday and Sunday. I know because I ask them every Monday what they did over the weekend. So I left a classroom because somebody asked me to come be a science coordinator. And what that means is this little, that star is, we have 59 districts over there. And they said, come be a science coordinator. And I sat down with the superintendent. I said, I can do that. And I thought, okay, I got to leave this gaming thing behind. They want me to be a science coordinator. Well, little did I know, 2 weeks after I started that job, I got invited to the White House to talk about gaming. And he called me into his office. Here's our 59 districts, by the way. He called me into his office and he said, I think we should do this in our region. And I said, are you insane? You want to roll out gaming in 59 districts. And by the way, one of the districts in the very south has 12 students, K-12. The biggest district in Spokane has 31,000, okay? The top districts up near the Canadian border are 3 hours from Spokane. To get professional development, they have to travel 3 hours one way, right? So I said to Dr. Michael Dunn, who I love and adore, he's my superintendent, and I say, yeah, you let this work in and you're inviting crazy into our region. And he said, you know what, complicated, yes, complex, absolutely, but crazy, no, Tammie, I think it's an idea whose time has come. So there, my point is that without great leadership, some of our work just wouldn't move forward. So we started out by awareness, right? And we started offering professional development because here's what we found. We've got teachers that are bloody brilliant and they want a game. They're great. They're so far ahead of me, and we're gonna let them lead, right? But we've got a group of teachers that they wanna do something fun, but they don't even know where to start, or they don't know where the resources are, or they're not even sure. So I started developing models, right, for elementary, middle, and high. And by the way, how many of you know that elementary students are a whole lot different than high schoolers? And middle school, they're just a breed of their own, okay? So we started building stuff, and the great thing is you've got teachers that are going, I want to try it, Tammie, but I'm just terrified. I would get calls and people would say, Tammie, can you just come stand in my room while I do this so that if I screw up, I've got a safety net under me? And I'd say, sure, I can go do that. Like, what do I, sure, I can be a safety net. So we started developing classroom PD. We also started developing administration PD because what I noticed about districts, whether you're 12 students or 31,000 students, if administration is not behind you, if superintendents don't understand the vision and what you're trying to do, that work isn't really moving. You need that support, that great leadership behind you, right? I mean, I had great leadership in my district. And what's been great is that our region, they have let me speak at what they call a rural alliance, where every single district superintendent is there. And we also had to have tech support there because I don't know about you, but when you walk into a classroom and you want to start using electronics, if your tech people aren't on board, your work's not moving, right? So then we had districts that said, hey, Tammie, we think you're a little bit happy out there working on this stuff. Can we do some stuff around after school programs? And the other thing, the reason they said that is because you know what? We've got these things called standards and we need to meet standards. And I get that. And we can meet standards with no problem using gaming. But that was a little bit too far of a reach for some of our schools. And they said, hey, you know what? Would you develop some after school programs? Yeah, how hard can it be, right? My famous 5 words that my husband wishes would leave my language. Gaming clubs, we invented programming clubs, we started gaming competitions, we did some hackathons, and we started targeting the community. And here's what I learned as a teacher. If my community supported my work and my parents supported my work, it was difficult for my administration to not support my work, right? And he even accused me once and said, you have students coming down to my office to promote your work. And I said, I'm gonna do what works. My job is to serve them, not you. Sorry, that's my job. So we actually threw a game jam for Girl Scouts. It went fabulous. I learned a lot. I think they learned something. But so we started targeting some of our communities. Our libraries are now doing this in our region. We threw a game jam. And we got all the local community colleges. We got Whitworth University, Gonzaga, you might have heard of them. They have an okay basketball team. And we had Eastern Washington University, and people wanted to play, right? So what we did was we got together and designed it. And we threw something called the Spoke-a-thon. And this was great because it gained a lot of publicity. I had state senators asking me to come to their offices to talk to them about this so that we could promote it. I have 2 minutes, so okay, if I'm talking fast, sorry. And I want to show you that we had companies get involved. And they said, you know what, we're going to donate our space. And so we had these maker spaces. And the reason I wanted to put these pictures up, these are actual student quotes from what they learned. It was a 24-hour experience for high school students overnight. If you've not stayed up with a bunch of high school students, 50 high school students, you should. It's a great time. I got home the next day. My husband met me at the door and he said, like you look like hell. Sorry, can I say that? Sorry. So anyway, and these kids, my favorite part about this hackathon was it wasn't about programming and it wasn't about gaming. I mean, it kind of was, but every single survey we got said, oh, we got to just do what we love. The other thing they said was we got to collaborate with people. And collaboration isn't always easy when you think you're the best person or the smartest person in the room, but these kids loved it. And they even had great discussions. I love this one, getting the stupid scripts to work. We had a bunch of high schoolers there. What was great was the university sent a bunch of computer programmers to work with these kids all night. So if the kids got stuck, these people had one-to-one help. They had group work all night long. My favorite part was the 4 a.m. dance that everybody did. Okay. Being able to get to share ideas and get help from more experienced coders and just getting to do what they wanted to do. But my favorite part about this, and I'm going to stop here here's the 8 projects that came out of it. Here are some things that came out of it. The funding piece. It's kind of hard to move work forward if you don't have the funding. And so we've had a couple grants, but my favorite part was this Hagen Foundation up here. They actually gave us the money to throw the hackathon. And what was really great was the gentleman who sat on the board who approved money for us said to me after I presented, we threw the hackathon, they asked for a presentation. He came to me and he said this, you know, Tammie, I read your presentation and your proposal. He said, and as I'm reading through it, I'm thinking there is no way this is educational and there's no way it's going to work. Because we told him we want to use gaming to educate. And he said, as I'm sitting there reading your proposal thinking, what is this craziness? He said, I looked down at my 3-year-old grandson who was sitting next to me on an iPad learning his letters and the vowels. And he said, I looked down at him, looked back at your proposal, and just signed it. And what was really fabulous is we invited them to come to the hackathon. It was great. The lady who came walked out of one of the rooms where they were programming games on gravity and sprites jumping from planet to planet and said, do you know what they're doing in there? And I said, why, yes, I do. She said, you want round 2, right? Because we want to fund this. You know? Oh, yeah, money is everything. College Spark, by the way. College Spark just gave us $150,000 to work with one middle school for 3 years to implement gaming all the way across the middle school. And my favorite thing is that district with 31,000 people in our region who, you know, they don't always play well in the sandbox with other people because they know best, and that's okay, they can know best. I just got called in by their teaching and learning director, and he said, I want to gamify my school district. And I said, 31,000 kids? He goes, yeah, build me a model. I'm on that, no problem. Rural districts are much easier to work with. They can change on a dime. Big districts, wow. So anyway, this is some of our work. And some of my favorite work, actually, you guys, is we're starting to work with the juvenile center, kids that are incarcerated. We're starting to train those teachers. And we're starting to also work with Next Gen, which also serves our homeless kids, our homeless community, and trying to get them skills and get them different attitudes and behaviors in order for them to step into the workforce. So thank you very much. I know I took my own time. Thank you so much.
So I encourage you to follow all of these teachers. They're all active on Twitter, and talk to them for the rest of the conference. We only have about 10 minutes for questions. And I took notes and I will refine them, so hopefully I'll get all the links if you missed some things. But the first question I would like to ask is, so we have a lot of game developers, people that would like to get into schools or talk to teachers. It might be a little intimidating to get into that whole world. Do they go to the principal? Do they just find an interested teacher? Like, where should they start? Should they start from the top down, like sweet talk a superintendent? Or what do you think? Anyone can answer. And here it is.
Give me your card. We love to play test.
Here you go.
There you go. We play tested Happy Adams. If you happen to see the VR earlier this morning, we play test for Shell Games. We play tested Minecraft EDU. Mary, about 7 years ago, I think at this point, which I think it's up for an award. So yeah, give me your card. We'll play test it.
So I had a game developer reach out to me, just a local game developer, Jane G from Spring Bay Studios, and I have quite a bit of freedom at my school as well. My administration just kind of leaves me alone. And so I've been working with this game developer for the last 2 years, and she's been coming in playtesting her environmental games with my grade 7 students. And for them, that's been an incredible experience to kind of be part of that beta testing phase, giving feedback to her, her making those changes, coming back, visiting them, showing the changes that she made, her teaching them about game design. So that's another thing, just reaching out to local game developers and having them come into the classroom.
I think focus on attitude and aspirations. Don't look for knowledge and skills, because you can fill in those gaps later. Because you're going to find yourselves looking for a lot of hours, a lot of time, a lot of emails, and you'll fill in what you need, but the attitude is number one.
I think anecdotally, a lot of teachers do have some degree of autonomy as to what they teach with. My former principal wouldn't want me going to him and asking if I should show this video clip on YouTube that supports learning. You know, he'd rather me go to him and say, can I expense $25 to go buy Pandemic with a teacher discount and play that in class? Sure, no problem, right? And the other important piece is that teachers that I've studied, they operate in an affinity space. You know, I'm sure all of us on a panel are going to keep talking. You know, we don't operate in a vacuum. Although there are a lot of Lone Ranger teachers, as Ron calls them, you know, maybe one game-based learning teacher in a classroom, but we tend to rely on each other on social media. You know, we encourage each other and we share games, and that's not just with teachers, but with developers as we play test in the classroom as well.
Thanks. So I work with 59 school districts, which is a whole lot of teachers, and I don't think there's a magic answer here. I have had districts where the teachers have jumped on board and the administration has followed. I've had administrators come to me and say, Tammie, we want to do this. Can you come work with my teachers? And no teachers were really on board until I came in and did the PD. I've also had people where I get invited to districts and the tech people are sitting there, and that's a real key piece because the tech people drive what's going on in classrooms and what's going on. I used to work for a district, literally, you couldn't do anything because our tech people had us locked down. So without their approval, and now we're not moving, right? That's not really true so much anymore. I think technology has become a, oh, let's open it up kind of thing. But those three gateways are all very important, and it's all very important that people play. If I could say one thing that I think about getting anything into any district, it's an R word, and it's called relationships, 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 right? So I have a lot of play testers call me because I know my districts, right? And it's not that they can't email those districts, but if they email those districts cold, there's no relationship there, right? So that, I would say, is a very, very key piece.
Okay, so oh my God. So another question would be, so Matt, you mentioned that teachers twist the game.
Yes.
Can any of you think of a specific game where it just didn't quite fit what you needed? Like maybe it had a dashboard and you never used the dashboard, or it perfectly fit, like the way they implemented the leaderboard or something. If you don't have a specific example, that's okay. And then I will go to the audience for questions. Oh, we got one back there.
Yeah, I served sixth grade humanities program. So we use World of Warcraft with narrative ELA pieces and no-brainer, but when we used Civ part, I needed something else. So I went to Civ 5, and
the interesting part about using Civ 5 was that, for those of you who know the game, some of it is very accurate and some of it is not. So the big piece that my kids had to do was, after their session in Civ 5, they had to go to their running Google Doc of reflection and determine what they encountered that day that was authentic and accurate by cross-referencing it, and what was not, and also by cross-referencing it. So that was a way that I could still pull that game out and use it, because it had so much wealth for my students, but not ignore the fact that, like, no, Gandhi's not going to nuke you.
Yeah, and so kind of like the paratext that Constance was talking about this morning, that you need or have used.
I found that the teachers that are in this tribe that I studied, they're also like here, okay? Some in the room, we go to conferences, we read the books, we know what core mechanics are, for example. So teachers then play games together and pull out what the core mechanics are and balance them themselves. Constance mentioned this morning, you want a game where what you're doing in the game is what you should be learning. But, a good teacher can play a game. I played One Night Ultimate Werewolf in my class, and I use that to teach the Salem witch trials. And I have students in 7th grade read a 10th grade book, The Crucible. And I had an argument with an observer, an administrator, who said, you can't do that because that's over their Lexile range. And I'm like, but Constance's research, I have to explain that. And many of them read the book, But yeah, a good teacher who knows what core mechanics are, and they should already know their learning goals, can adapt any game, learning or not. Designed for learning or entertainment, I should say.
Anybody else? Any questions from the audience? Right here.
I had a question in regards to budgets for games. How much of the budget do you guys actually control, and how much? Where do you feel yeah, I never mind. But you understand the kind of premise of where I'm trying to go. How much can you spend on games? That's a reasonable amount. Obviously, obviously free is the goal, but
Right, but teachers also will pay for something that really, really works well and is really well designed and that fits right into what they're doing, right? So we've had games from, like I've spent $190 for a year, right? So that I could serve all my kids because my kids changed at quarter or semester or whatever. And I don't mean to say it depends, but here's the thing. As a teacher, I had this much budget, right? And it was a science budget. And if it was a science game, I could spend it. And having said that, if it was something over that, I would either go to my administration or, and this is how as a teacher I kind of would do end arounds. When you get known for either grant writing or for work you're doing, I would just go to the PTA or I would go to organizations. And sometimes I would say to my principal, is this going to be a political problem if I go to an organization to fund this? And sometimes he would smile and say, for the love, Tammie, would you quit doing that stuff? And then he would fund it for me, right? So I know because you learn to work I'm here to serve my children, right? I am not here to serve an administration as much as I love them and they supported me. So it would depend. And you're right, free is great, but I also teach pre-service teachers at 2 universities, and I can tell you, they have given me feedback and said, even if it's free, if it isn't great for kids, we're not going to use it anyway, right? So the key is to make a great game and then find a way to get it funded, right?
Do we have time for one more? I'm going to do it.
So
Never mind, sorry.
Oh, sorry.
One quick thing is, I made a phone call to GW Publishing, explained what our goal was, and within a matter of minutes, they said they offered, their game engine. And all they asked was anecdotal information on the students. You mentioned the word relationships. That word has gotten, for our program, which starts our 3 years, I spent $0 on the game engines for us. And we also use Game Maker, RPG Boss, and Unity, which are all free. And so it's just a question of finding resources. So look and see who your relationships are, or build relationships so you can get what you can.
thank you guys. Appreciate it.
Okay. So I'm a game developer, and I was thinking about building a serious game. I'm just wondering if there's resources out there for what teachers are looking for, what would be the best content for me to create, what would be the most useful, or if you have any idea for how I might figure that out.
When I brought games to the classroom, I looked on Games for Change's website because they're rich, shared experiences for students. And I try to extend the life of games. So if a student plays a serious game, like the Migrant Trail is one I've used, then I put them on Twine afterwards and say, what would happen next? Or write it from a different perspective. Because a lot of games are like one and done. You can play it in a short amount of time if it's an online game, or a board game, and maybe you can only have 4 kids at a time play a game like Pandemic or something. We need tools to go with what's next, not just assessments that are built in and dashboards, but we want students creating things. That's what's so amazing about Minecraft. You play Minecraft. Or my son who's 6, he watches YouTube videos on Minecraft. He watches YouTube videos on making things with cardboard boxes. And then he does it, you know? That's fantastic. And I think we need more of that and less of instant analytics about, you know, what students are doing in each game level.
Okay. Thank you. No, I'm so sorry. I got cut off. But thank you to our panel.